Hey guys, Owen here with Seek Outside. I just recently got back from a caribou hunt a little bit north of Tok, Alaska, and I kind of want to just take you through what I brought, what I thought was good, what I didn't bring that I wish I did, and what I didn't, think was worth it. So, first of all, we're going to start with the pack. I have a Lanner 5400 in Spectra, and this is on an integrated frame with an internal load shelf. I am always glad I bring this thing. I'm a huge fan of the integrated frame with the internal load shelf. All you got to do is wash it after a hunt. So I was really happy to bring this. Tons of organizational pockets. Just really happy that I brought this. I'm happy I bring it on every trip. So, and then I brought two Seek Outside prototype shelters because that was part of our trip. Open it up here. Right here I have a prototype shelter with a nest. The other prototype shelter is just not available for me to show you guys. I set these up with two trekking poles. I use my sissy sticks. Always take these on every trip with me as well, so definitely a really dialed setup. And I also had our twisted aluminum stakes. The ground we were in was really rough, super gravelly, so long burly stakes was the name of the game up there, as well as some Atwood rope. I don't have any Atwood on me right now, but that stuff is just so usable for everything. We used it on our game pole. I used it while getting my caribou. Just a jack of all trades. And now, while we're on the topic of tents and stuff, I also had a pretty dialed sleeping setup. I'm pretty in love with it. I have this Nemo pillow. Packs up super small, and it gives me a ton of elevation on my head, which is great for me. Super comfortable. I also had a Thermarest ProLite Apex pad. This thing is super light and packable for the comfort. If I was going to be there longer, I would have probably bought some kind of down pad with a little bit more R value and a little bit more cushion. But for 5-6 days, I can get away with this and be really happy. My favorite part of my sleeping system is this Western Mountaineering Sequoia sleeping bag. So this is a 5-degree sleeping bag, and this is a semi-rec as well. So it's super large. Western Mountaineering makes some of the highest end bags in the game, I think. The best things about this bag is it literally feels like it dries you out in the night. If it gets wet, it doesn't soak through because the material is somewhat water resistant. And also the zipper, they have this weirdly intelligent thing where they tied all the fabric back via stitching, so you can actually zip it up super easy. So I am probably, out of all my gear, in love with the backpack and my sleep system the most. A dialed sleep system, a dialed backpack and tent is going to get you a long ways. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of my kill kit / gun system. So I took a Tikka T3 Lite stainless 270. I was shooting 130 grain Superformance GMX. I was really impressed with that round, like kind of blown away. It did a really good job downrange. And this rifle, I'm sure everybody knows, is, well, if you don't know, it's probably the cheapest, best gun you can buy. I think these run $600-700, and they are accurate as can be. I was running a Leupold 3x9 scope on there. It's one of the cheaper ones, like the VX2 or something. Yep, VX2. And it's a great optic for the price, and Leupold backs that with a great warranty as well. So overall, gun was amazing. Was super happy with this. As far as rangefinders go, I was using a Vortex rangefinder. This thing can reach out pretty far, well over 1,000 yards. It's the Ranger 1800. I got this about a day before I left on my trip, and I was really happy with it. The only thing I wish it had, when you're wearing gloves and stuff, is this indent right here. It's really hard to feel. I wish it was kind of just elevated rather than an indent. So I was having a hard time measuring range on a lot of animals I was seeing. As far as knives go, I brought a Benchmade knife. Here we go. This thing did really well. I was pretty impressed with it. It did kind of lose sharpness over the you know, the animal that I got as well as the animal that Kevin got. So then my trusty outdoor edge knife with the replaceable blades came in perfect. You know, I take this on every hunt. This thing is great for any kind of skinning, deboning, just the whole animal. It does extremely well. So I'm always bringing this, but it was the first time I got to try the Benchmade and was just seriously impressed. Held its sharpness for a long time. Next thing I want to talk about is kind of my container slash food system. So I've had this GSI Outdoors thing for a while. It's definitely not the lightest, but it's a really good system. It's got a nice mug inside. I was using this for some mountain ops every single morning. And then I made some homemade elk chili mac. This thing was what held it, and it's just a good system overall. I've used it for years. You know, there's no point in changing it up for a couple ounces for me, so I'd rather just have something that's trusty and works. I also had, I think 75% of us know what this is. If you're going into the backcountry and you're sitting around a long time, it's kind of nice to have a little flask with maybe something in it. Since I'm on the cheaper side, some Jose Cuervo. We had a lot of containers. So some of the stuff we shared as we brought on our group. I always like to bring a 48-ounce Nalgene. You can hold more water in here, and generally when I'm running around with my gun and stuff, this will kind of offset the weight of the rifle on the other side of my pack when this is on the other side. So I'm always running one of these. They just work. I also want to talk, you know, we brought a DSLR and a bunch of camera gear. You know, we were taking videos and photos of everything because when you're on a once-in-a-lifetime trip, you got to have some memories. I brought an Anchor charge pack for my phone as well as my DSLR. Honestly, it was more than I needed. You know, when you're out hunting, you don't really realize maybe how little you're going to take photos because you're so involved in the moment. But, you know, by the time we were done with our trip, we were like 4 days in, I had 3 bars left. It still has 2 bars, and I've taken it on 2 camping trips. So for the size of it, the packability, and, you know, honestly the weight, really impressed with that guy. And finally, on to some clothes. So I live in the high deserts of Colorado where it reaches 100 degrees in the summers. August is generally our hottest month, and I went to Alaska where it was 30 degrees, which was a bit of a shocker for my body. So I was somewhat prepared. I brought socks that were waterproof. These things were so impressive. I just found them at Cabela's like a few days before we went out. I was really happy with these, mostly because waterproof boots that I brought were, number one, a hair bit big for me. That's some kind of mistake on my end, not necessarily a boot problem. But, you know, if you got into water above these laces, it would start to wick water in there, and if I was wearing anything else, it would have started getting really cold and miserable. So I was really happy I had some waterproof socks. I think next time if I go out, I would consider a waders and a waders boot almost, just because it was so wet. Here it's one of the wettest summers Alaska's had. On to other clothes. I've ran these First Light, I believe they are guide pants, don't quote me, but I've ran these First Light pants for a long time. These things are great, you know, in all conditions. They're breathable, they're stretchy. They're great for moving up sketchy terrain. Definitely some First Light base layers. As you'll notice, kind of a lot of my kit is First Light. I definitely dig their stuff. This First Light base layer was great. Definitely kept me warm. The biggest thing I was happy to have, even though I said I would probably take some waders over this just because it was so wet, was these First Light rain pants. You can zip them on while you're fully clothed, which is huge for me, you know, because the rain did eventually stop for a couple hours. So I was really happy to have these. These kept me dry, and being dry out there is huge for me. I also had, let's pull this guy out, I had some long johns as far as pants go. Again, I was freezing, so these long johns were great to have. So I was often wearing 3 layers on my bottom. And then as far as some gaiters go, I was running these gaiters that I inherited from Kevin, and these things did great for me. They kept water out of the top of my boots, even though it still found a way in. Regarding top layers, I was running this kind of wicking First Light bottom. This thing was really nice. I actually didn't ever feel really wet from my sweat. I wasn't moving as much as I would on like a general elk hunt, just because the service dropped us off next to some really good animals, but you know, nonetheless, hiking up a mountain gets you sweaty. So this guy was a great addition. Underneath that, I was running this First Light Sawtooth. I just got this thing right before my trip. It's actually a really cool jacket because it's kind of a hybrid. You got this kind of like vest almost in the center, and then you kind of have a lighter outwear on your arms. I was really happy to have this. This was my second layer generally. And then for my third layer, I was running the First Light Brooks jacket. Really happy with this jacket. I've ran it for elk season and everything in between. It's been very warm, very solid. Haven't had any ripping or anything, so love that jacket. And then not pictured, one of the things I was most impressed with was the cheapest rain jacket REI sold. I'm not a huge fan of going and buying off-brand stuff necessarily, but I was genuinely impressed. For $100, I've had $300 rain jackets that have ripped on me. So for $100, it kind of shows you that maybe you don't need to buy the most expensive gear to get out there in the woods. So there was some things that I wish I would have brought on my trip. Number one, as silly as it is a scope cover. I was getting a lot of rain in there and actually used one of our possible pouches, the 1.5 liter, as a scope cover. So that was a silly mistake on my end. Another mistake was not bringing a good pair of binos. We were kind of all trying to split weight. When we're on that plane, we're only allowed to bring 50 pounds with us. So I was just running these rangefinders, which in an elk scenario, you know, I'm usually hunting for meat and stuff, and I'm usually hunting female elk, so I'm not really paying too much attention to the antlers and stuff. But when it came down to it, and you're sitting at camp and you're spotting around, some binoculars would have been nice. I know that kind of goes against what most hunters would do. A few other dislikes, I wish I would have brought 2 pairs of gloves. These pair of gloves were great, and they repelled the water, I think the best any glove could have. But you know, at one point we were on a stalk, we were on the ground, it was socked in, it was super wet, so these just soaked through. So that was, you know, it was the way it was, but 2 pairs of gloves would have been nice to leave something drying and wearing something while it's wet outside. Another thing, I think the whole group would have done this, we did bring a hot tent, again a prototype hot tent, and there was enough wood for us to burn, but barely. You know, we couldn't get a real hot fire, we couldn't get it really warm, so I kind of wish we would have brought some extra wood. Again, you know, when you're planning for any kind of condition, you know, it could be buggy and hot, and it could be socked in, and you could be on a ridge, and it could be windy. It could just be miserable out there in Alaska on a caribou hunt. So we didn't bring any wood just because we were overpacked ourselves. For, you know, we were right at the 50-pound limit. So wood would have been nice, but you know, you never know where you're going to be. So you could be in the trees and have plenty of it. And then I'm going to touch again on the waders / wader boots. I think I would have brought the wader boots alone, or just the waders, something with a waterproof sock, just completely waterproof, just because I was getting wet on one of my stalks. I just stalked straight forward at the animal. And when you're doing that, you don't really have an option to kind of go around the lakes and stuff, or ponds, I guess. So, you know, there's quite a few things that, you know, I wish I would have brought, but I think overall my kit was really dialed. And I think, you know, obviously it got me a caribou, so I was pretty happy with it. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope this was an informative review for you guys, you know, kind of going over all the gear and everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channel, as well as check out our Instagram and Facebook. That's at Seek Outside. If you have any other questions, just go ahead and email us. info@seekoutside.com is a great way to get a hold of us, and we generally respond within one day. You guys have a great day.